Access 2007 Query Design. We can create queries based off of multiple tables. So when we normalize our tables, because that's the right way to separate your data and store it, we may want to put it all back together again later so that we see what all that data means grouped back together. So that's why we can use the Query Wizard or Design View to create queries based off of multiple tables and just show some of the fields. Now, we also have this term called joins when we're talking about queries. If we have multiple tables, they should be related, and those relationships are going to translate into joins within our queries. If there are no relationships between those tables, Access will try to join like fields together. We have different terms for these joins. We have inner joins, which are also referred to as equijoins. We also have outer joins, which are referred to as left joins or right joins. Now, we'll get into that in this nugget, of course. We're also going to talk about why you can harness the power of Access in order to do database maintenance or data maintenance on the various tables that might have some mistakes. Let's refresh ourselves on what it means to normalize data. We have table 1 here, and table 1 we'll say is our animal food. Our animals eat carrots and steak and chicken and crickets and all that different type of crazy animal zoo food. Well, we have that in table 1. In table 2, we have the vendors that supply this information. If this was one big table instead of 2, every order we'd have to say carrots from vendor A. Vendor A's address is here, the city, the phone. All this information would have to go in one record, which could lead to larger disk space usage than we need and more human error. Also, it's much easier when we put this information together into, we'll separate this information into a couple different tables, because then we can just have a drop down and the user can select that vendor and automatically that address is associated with it. Well, right, that makes sense. For data storage, this is where the query comes in. With the query, we get to take just a few records from table 1 and all the other records or fields from table 2. So we're working with fields from both of these tables at the same time. Does a couple things for us. As far as input goes, the user can open up one form and the data will go into the query that's based off these tables, and our information will be updated here. Also, we can base a report off of that query, and then our report will be putting all that information back together again, and our user can analyze and see, you know what, we order a whole heck of a lot of carrots from this vendor. They should be giving us a better discount. Or, oh my goodness, we're almost out of carrots. We need to contact this vendor and get some more in here so our animals don't go hungry. So let's make a query based off of multiple tables. Here is Access. We are in our zoo database. We are going to use the Query Wizard to get started. That's on the Create ribbon under Query Wizard on the far right. We are creating a simple query even though it has multiple tables. What should be the basis here? Well, let's go ahead and start out with our animal habitat. This is where our animals live. We just want to see the habitat and the square footage. We want to add another table, so we stay within this dialog box. We simply choose a different data source. Animal inventory will tell us our animal's name and our animal's age. I'm just double-clicking to bump these fields over. We can even use a third table, a fourth table, however many make sense. Zookeepers is what we'll choose now. Let's go ahead and choose last name and first name, office phone. These are the fields we'll see in our associated query, and we could go back into Query Design View when we're through and update this. Next. Do we want to see every field of every record? Yeah, let's do that, of what we've chosen. We could do summary, however, it won't really work here because we don't have many items to calculate. It doesn't make sense to sum the age. We could average the age, or we could just count the records. I'm happy with detail. We'll click Next. What would we like to call this query? Habitat query? Okay, we tend not to use spaces in our naming convention, so we'll remove the space, and we'd like to open the query when we're through. So here's our query. We have habitats as our very first field. I could double click to auto size this field. The names of all of our animals, ages. Here are all the zookeepers. So we're putting this information back together again, but it made sense to separate this data into those base tables the way that we did. If we go into Query Design View, which we can do by clicking on the Home tab and choosing View, we now see that there have been some relationships set up here among these various tables. That's what these are. They're not one-to-many relationships. They're just indicators that Access went through and noticed, hey, you know what? You've got a habitat ID in both these tables. Those are probably holding the same data. This is probably how I should link these tables back together. And this is that grid area, and it indicates the field and the base table for all of the information that we're displaying. And if it has a green check, that means we want to display it in the associated query. I could select the checkbox from square footage and run this query again. If I click on the Design tab, that's where my Run button is. All right, I do not see that anymore. And of course, just like in our tables, just like in our forms, we can sort the information or filter it and go back to View here, and I could make changes as well. I could choose to sort by habitat in ascending order here, or I could even rearrange the way that it's viewed by clicking and dragging, running again, and now I have it by animal name in my far left column. I could even update information here, and that would update the base table because our queries are dynamically associated with our tables. Now, let's go ahead and design our very own query, and I'll show you where those joins come in. I will close this query. Do I want to save the changes? Sure. To create a new query from scratch, back to the Create ribbon, and I'm going to use Query Designer this time. This is asking me which tables I would like to use. How about animal food? I can click Add, or I could double click. Let's go ahead and use vendors. I'll double click. By the way, if I were to double click, because I didn't see it, and I had all these, I could always right click and choose to remove the table from view. It's not deleting the table, just removing it from my view. There is no association between animal food and vendors, even though that says _2. That was just the second appearance of this table. I would like to see food name, quantity in stock, price, and let's go ahead and do company here, and address, and phone number. And we'll run this, and let's see how many records we have. We have 144 records. This is bad data. This is what's called a Cartesian table, or we have cross joins. What happened was Access was not able to pick up any type of relationship, so it said, you know what, you want to see each product? We'll do baby carrots first. Well, here are all the baby carrots. We have 75. They're all $7. They look like that's the same item, right? Well, it didn't have a relationship, so it didn't know what company our baby carrots came from. So it listed off to us every single company we had. Luckily, there were only a few in our vendors database. And we can tell here, Tropical Nutrients is where it starts all over again, and that's our second product. So because it did not detect a relationship, it multiplied each occurrence of the name baby carrots with each occurrence of the name company. It actually did it by vendor ID, so each food ID times each occurrence of the vendor ID. A Cartesian table, it gives us way too much information. How do we rectify this? Back into Design View, we can make sure that we associate this together. Our vendor for animal food should be linked with our vendor ID. Let's run it again. Now we only have 15 records. That really cleaned it up. So we've got carrots. We actually have duplicates of carrots here probably. But look at this. If we look at our baby carrots, we don't even have baby carrots here at all because we probably don't have it associated with a company. But fish comes from Sakana Fresh, hay comes from Farm Produce, and so on down the line. Isn't that strange, though, that we had baby carrots before, but we don't have baby carrots now? This, again, has to do with our joins. This is what's considered an equijoin. An equijoin means only display information if there is data on both sides of that join. If there is a product, baby carrots, in one table, but there's not an association with that second table, if there's no vendor in our baby carrots record, then it's not going to display it because it has to have data on both sides of that join. Well, let's find baby carrots. I'm going to right click on the join and choose join properties. You have to right click exactly on it. We don't have join properties here, but if my pointer's exactly on this, right click, join properties. I could delete it as well. We have what's referred to as the left table because it's on the left, the right table because it's on the right. Nothing more scientific about it. It is placement, animal food and vendors, just like this. Right now I had an equijoin. Only include rows where join fields from both tables are equal. Now we can choose only, we'll include all records from animal food, whether or not there's an association with the right table or vendors too. Let's do that one. We'll click OK. Now we see, we have an arrow pointing towards the right. When I run this again, now I see I have 18 records because there are some data that's missing. I have baby carrots, organic carrots, and I right-clicked, I wanted to double-click to resize, and free-range chickens that have no companies and no addresses at all. Everything else does have an associated vendor with it. Would it help if I opened up that animal food table? Here we have the animal food table, and look, there is no vendor chosen for these 3 products, but there is for every other item. And we do have 18 records in this table. Just for kicks, because we're working with vendors, I'll open up that one as well. We have 8 different vendors, and these are completely populated with data. I'll go ahead and close these because if you're working with joins and relationships and you have a base table open, sometimes it throws errors at you because it thinks that the table is already in use. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the other type of join. When we go into Design View, we can right-click to get back into the join properties. And now let's choose to include all records from vendors too, and only those from animal food where the joined fields are equal. All right, now our arrow is pointing towards the left. When I click Run, I have 16 records now because it is making sure that we have everything in the company, which is our vendor. And here is the name of all of our food. It turns out that we had one vendor, Big Bug Foods, and we didn't have any associated food in our animal food table. So we have one item that had no data included within it, and this again was driven from the vendors table. There was a record in the vendors table that did not have a match in the food table that was associated with it. So my point here is you can take advantage of the various join properties in order to find empty data. Let's check out a couple other types of maintenance queries. Do I want to save the changes of query 1? Yeah. Do I want to call it query 1? I'll call it joins, just because that's what we were practicing. Not the best name for the real world, but makes sense for us because it is descriptive. I'll go back to create, and now I'm going to use Query Wizard. I'm going to choose the Find Duplicates Query Wizard. We already found the duplicates, so we're duplicating our effort here, but I want to show you a nice maintenance tool that you can use. Okay, what tables? We're going to use our animal food table again. We want to choose the field that might contain duplicate information. That was either food name or food ID, either one of those. I'll choose food ID. Actually, let's choose food name and not food ID, just because food name is going to be more clear for us. I'll choose next. And do I want to query the query to show fields in addition to those duplicate values? I do. I'd like to see all of the fields. I'll click next. That's a great name for this query, Find Duplicates for Animal Food. And yes, I would like to view the results. Finish, and here we have 3 duplicate records. I have carrots in there 3 times with 3 different food IDs. So those wouldn't have been duplicate. It had to be the name because that's where we messed up with our data entry, right? We had someone that said, oh, carrots, we got to order carrots. We don't have carrots in our animal food database, so I better add that in. And each time it gave it a new ID. And we have different stock values. I wonder if we really do have 101 carrots in stock, or if somebody's only been updating food ID 18 when they're depleting carrots and feeding them to our hungry animals. They do all have the same price, and they all come from the same vendor. Here is where we can do some maintenance, and we could delete these specific records. Let's go ahead and do one more query. Query Wizard, now we'll do find unmatched queries. Okay, now we want to do this again on our animal food table. Next. And we want to associate this with vendors again, just like we did before. Next. What piece of information exists in both tables? Vendor and vendor ID. This is going to match these fields together. Next, what fields do I want to see in my results? How about all of them? Next, what would I like to name it? Animal food without matching vendors, and view the results. Okay, well here they are. This is where we see our baby carrots, our organic carrots, and our free-range chicken. They don't have any vendors associated with them. So if we were good DBAs, we'd be running this when we think we have missing data, and we'd run it when we have the documentation, maybe orders, maybe invoices, and we'd be able to say, oh, well, our baby carrots, they come from Vegetable Bazaar, and we could go through and make all of these updates to our information here because we don't want databases with bad information. Do I want to save changes to the layout of query? Notice it's saying, do I want to save changes to the layout, not to the data, because as soon as I made this entry, that data was stored and was saved there. Just like as soon as you delete a database record, the data is gone. When you make a change to the data, it is updated immediately. You never have to choose save to save data. Only you need to choose save to save the design. Let's say that you already have a query created and you don't want to go through and do a find unmatched query, but you do want to see if there are any blank pieces of information. What you can do is create just a simple query from Query Design. We're going to go ahead and do this on animal food because we know we have missing information. Which fields? Well, we would like to see food ID, food name. We'd like to see all of this. And vendor is where we know that there's data missing. The criteria is called isNull, ISNULL. It is not case sensitive, but this is the command for access. I'll choose run, and it returns to me the two records that exist in our table without vendors. So let's update this information. Carrots, they're going to come from our Vegetable Bazaar, and our free-range chickens, these come from Taste Like Chicken. Just to make sure that this data was updated in the table, I'm going to close Query 1. Do I want to save changes to Query 1? No. Because I've updated all that information, I do not need to save that. Let's open up Animal Food, and we could sort this by name. I can click the Sort Ascending information. My baby carrots, Vegetable Bazaar, my organic carrots, Vegetable Bazaar, and my free-range chicken, Tastes Like Chicken. It's all updated, and you know what? I've done my research, and I know that this record needs to be deleted. Are you sure it's going to be gone forever? Yep. And I'm going to delete this record as well. Are you sure it's going to be gone forever? Yeah, that's okay. Now I only have one record of carrots from farm produce, and I don't have to worry about any other problems because, again, I did my research. There was nothing else tied to those fields, and I know moving on, I'm okay by just having this one record. I haven't affected reports, I haven't affected forms, and I haven't affected real data that exists out there. So remember, if you want to create a query, you just go to that Create ribbon, and the tools are right there. Let's review what it was that we took a look at in this nugget. Well, it was all about query design. We had multiple tables that were normalized, but we created a query both with Design View and with the wizard that brought together many different fields from one or more tables. We also had joins. We had an inner join, also referred to as an equijoin, that only displayed to us information that existed on both sides of the join. Either you have a one-to-many relationship or another type of relationship that's already been set up between your tables, which is what is recommended, or Access will auto-join tables by fields that make sense. That way you'll have nice, clear records. But if that isn't the case, then you can set up an outer join on your own, either a left outer join or a right outer join. The left outer join means the table that's on the left is what's going to drive the results. It will show every record that exists on the left, whether or not it has any data in the right, whereas a right outer join is simply based on the table that's on the right. It will show all the records on the table on the right, but the table on the left may be missing some. Either way, this outer join is used so you see missing information so you can fill it in. We also took a look at Query Wizard to see duplicate records that we could delete and to see information that's missing so that we could add that in, because again, the whole point of using Microsoft Access is to collect good information so that you can send it out via a report to those decision makers, those people who need this information in order to make your business run like a champ. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.